I'm curious to hear you speak to it a bit, because it's another major challenge that's frequently brought up, and it has to do with the desert dunes and other desert deposits that they argue. I think they look to certain features in the Grand Canyon, and they'll say that these desert deposits can't form under intense floodwaters. They basically need, I think they say, lots of time in dry land. So I guess what would be a good response to something like that?
You can go on the Answers Research Journal website, and you can find several articles on that. One done by John Whitmore, who's the lead author, on the Coconino Sandstone. First of all, he discovered that the secular scientists hadn't done very good research on that to claim that it's a windblown sediment. Analysis of it said it had feldspar and mica, which you're hard pressed to, especially mica, form that in a desert. And the cross beds, they're pretty large. Maybe we'll say 20 or 30 meters high, a cross bed like this. And that shows you the current direction is going like this, because it's moving like that, and it's for kind of a delta structure that moves along. And if it was a desert, the angle of repose is about 33 degrees. But often these, like in the Coconino Sandstone, are around 22 degrees on average. And that's what you expect by ones deposited in water. And it's because of the huge crossbeds that secular science has even suggested that they're deposited by wind, because it seemed too catastrophic for them, and it would be. But we've since seen underwater dunes that are of that scale, by the way, in spots. So, and by the way, the grains are not well-rounded either, as you expect in a lot of deserts. Deserts will round a coarse-grained sand pretty fast, but the grains in the Coconino Sandstone are generally subangular to subrounded, which means that more likely it's formed in a watery environment and not in a wind environment. And you can say this for a lot of the sandstones in the West. The Navajo sandstone you see in Zion National Park, you see 2,000 feet of almost pure sand. That's a pretty tall order for a desert. But anyway, we've done research on this, and I think we got a pretty convincing case that these were deposited in water and not by wind.
And you mentioned micas. Is that a type of mineral or a group of minerals?
It's a clay mineral, and with wind you would destroy it.
Okay,
that's the issue.
And so that was, so right there would be an observation that's consistent with underwater formation.
Yeah, you can form that underwater better than you can in wind. And there's several others. Look on the answers. The person that really wants to do their homework. They're big articles, by the way. Mm-hmm. You can go on the Answers Research Journal, and you can find John Whitmore has several articles, but there's one main one about 8 years ago, I think, 10 years ago maybe, on the Coconino Sandstone. He's done huge amount of research on sandstones and sands, so I'd say he's quite an authority on it. So the person that really wants to dig and find out our answer, the answers are there if you want to look.
Are deserts in general readily explainable through the young Earth creation position?
Yeah, I think so. First of all, there's a problem accounting for so much sand. But during the flood, you'd expect the last bit of runoff to leave mud or sand or a combination. And then the wind will rework it into sand dunes or silt areas called loess, Loess. And you have a lot of this material on the surface of the earth. And it's difficult to explain by present processes. That there's way too much. It's difficult to figure the source. But our source would be the leftover deposits at the last draining of the floodwaters, and that these were reworked by ice age winds into sand dunes and areas of loess. Loess covers 6% of all the continents, especially south of the ice sheets in Europe and in North America. And some of that stuff is 50 meters thick in spots. So, and you'd have a lot of wind late in the ice age, especially at the boundary. So you'd expect a lot of this material. But where it originated, they haven't the problem. And here's another problem. They find that most of this loess is from the last ice age. And the guy wrote an article called "The Missing Loess." In other words, you don't see the loess deposits from previous supposed ice age, in which there's now 50 ice ages during the Pleistocene of various intensities. And you don't see much of those. But now, because this guy pointed this out in the journal Earth Science Review, I think in 2007, Van Loon was his name. I think now they're redating some of those lower loess layers, and they're getting some from previous ice ages, but the overall volume of that material is a lot less than what the current. There's no way you can account for the loess being deposited in the last ice age and not in any previous ice ages. They have ideas of it eroding away and then coming back. But I mean, we have such thick loess layers right now that the next ice age is supposedly due soon, according to the Milankovitch mechanism, and we still have it all there. It's not disappeared or been reworked. So that's one of their problems. And it was admitted in the journal Earth Science Reviews 2007 by a man named Van Loon, called "Missing Loess." I wrote an article. You can read about it on the creation.com website.
With the explanation involving leftover deposits from the late stages of the flood, and then those deposits being reworked post-flood, specifically during the Ice Age, if I understood correctly. So all deserts would be formed post-flood and not pre-flood or at creation.
Correct. Because you had so much erosion from somewhere, and that there'd be anything from the pre-flood you're not going to find.
Right.
So because of all the erosion of the pre-flood world.
I think this is so important because many people may erroneously think that most of the earth that we see today, including deserts, a lot of the geological features, reflect the pre-flood world or even the creation week, when in fact much of it has been reworked because of the flood. The entire real estate's essentially been rearranged. Is that right, Mike?
Exactly. We don't really know the pre-flood geography or topography. There's a number of questions about the pre-flood world, but we have clues in the Bible. We have some clues in the rocks and then fossils. I even have a whole chapter on that topic in my book I wrote with John Reed, How Noah's Flood Shaped Our Earth.